Alrighty. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. This is the reapplication webinar for returning students to learn more about the housing application for the 2024-2025 academic year, hosted by Housing and Residence Life. While people are trickling in, I'll just kind of do some housekeeping for the webinar. As you might have noticed, I just enabled the recording. We will be recording this webinar tonight. So if you want to go back and watch it or share it with others, we will be posting it at the end of the week on our YouTube channel, and we'll post it on our website. So you can access that at any time, and any of the information here will be available on our website. We will have a number of slides to go through this evening, so feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A box or in the chat. We have plenty of staff here to monitor both of those, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can at the end if they aren't already answered with the presentation. So feel free to kind of drop those in. You can either message, panelists or drop it for everyone. So either way, we'll kind of get to all of your questions. But wanted to kind of start off by thanking everyone for being here this evening. We're excited to kind of have you all. We have a number of things we want to review because we have a lot of students that are interested in learning about the reapplication process for next year. So I'm going to go ahead and just get started and go through this agenda here. So we'll go through a quick introduction of our housing team. Then we'll really dive into the process for next year's housing process. So that'll review timelines. We'll go in depth for each of the steps to apply for housing, what a rolling reapplication, kind of define that and what that process looks like. And then we'll also review the cancellation timeline. Then we'll also go through the residence halls, the overview and eligibility for each of them. If you're a certain classification level, what that means and what halls you could potentially be living in next year. And then we'll also take a brief moment at the end to review some off-campus housing information. So if you, maybe aren't able to get housing or decide no longer to live on campus, what our office can do to support you in your search for off-campus housing. And then, of course, we'll end with a question and answer session at the end with any questions that you may have. So to just do some quick introductions, as you can see on the screen, we have a couple of members of our assignments team highlighted. So my name is Kaylee McDonald. I'm the Associate Director for Housing Assignments and Communications. I oversee the assignments team and kind of any day in, day out processes that we're running, like this reapplication housing application process. We're also joined by Desi Haneva, who is our Assistant Director of Housing Assignments. So Desi is kind of on that front line, helping all of our students get their assignments and make sure that everything is processed accordingly. And then we're also joined on the assignments team. Shamir James is our marketing communications coordinator. So if you follow us on Instagram, if you look at our website at all, Shamir does all that great work and is able to kind of assist our students in communicating all those timelines. And then a couple other people that are on the call this evening. We have Chris Carter, who's an associate director in Residence Life. Chris is here to answer any kind of residential life questions that we might come up this evening for our upper class returning students. And then we also have our Director of Housing lurking in the shadows. Mason Henderson is also present with us this evening. On the side, you can see some just general contact information, how to get in touch with us. This will also be kind of at the end, but most generally, you can just email us at housing, and any one of the people on this call can respond to you there. We also have a live chat weekly, Monday through Friday from 1 to 4, that you can kind of get immediate answers if you have any questions. So now that you know who we are and what we're kind of doing, let's just jump right into things and talk about what it's like to live on campus. So the first big thing about living on campus that I like to highlight is your housing classification that you maybe are assigned when you log into our housing portal is really aligned to the number of semesters that you have been eligible to live on campus. So it's not necessarily connected to the number of credit hours that you have. So, you could be a sophomore, but you could have, junior standing in the university that would still, for us, place you as a sophomore and put you in sophomore housing. Just to kind of give some general numbers, that's helpful. About 65% of our sophomore students and about 25% of our upper class students do live on campus currently. I like to always say people decide to, move off campus for other reasons or study abroad. So that's kind of contributing to those numbers. On each floor of our residence halls, we do have student resident assistants, and we also have professional staff members that are called community directors for each building. So while your students are living on campus, they are supported by a kind of number of staff members on Chris's team to be able to help your students kind of transition from living at home to living with us. And then one of the things I just like to highlight here at the end is signing up for on-campus housing is for the full academic year. So it's for both semesters, fall and spring. So when a student selects their space, they'll select it for both the fall and spring term. There are, a variety of exemptions listed on our housing license agreement, such as, a student studying abroad in the spring, or they're withdrawing, or they graduate early. Those are all, exemptions for students to be released from their housing contract, and they would be able to kind of cancel their assignment accordingly. I will just note that if you have a student or you are a student planning on studying abroad for the fall 2024 semester, I would recommend not applying for housing now. Or if you apply for housing, making sure that once you're confirmed with your program that you cancel your assignment and cancel your application. And if you're interested in returning in the spring and living on campus, we'll have a completely separate application that will launch in October. Moving right along, now we'll really get into the reason why we're here and the reapplication process. So this is going to just be a general timeline, and I promise we'll go through all of these steps. So if it seems overwhelming, we'll absolutely go through everything. So the first thing that happened was our housing application opened. So on February 1st, the application opened on our housing portal via the reapplication button. So when your student logs in or when you log in, you're able to just click that button and be taken directly to the application. The next thing that happened just this past Thursday, our roommate matching opened. So this is an optional kind of piece, but it allows you to select the student or the students you would like to room with in the upcoming year ahead of your room selection. So again, this is optional, but as we like to say, we like to have people know who you're living with before you know where you're living. So you want to make sure that you're kind of searching out either friends or searching for people who might be compatible with you via this roommate matching piece. Then we have a little bit of time, but our next major event will be in March, is when we have our room selection period. So room selection is the time that you would actually go in and select your space. I like to highlight that if you are in a group with a roommate, the person with the earliest time slot can select the rooms on the entire group's behalf. And these time slots are randomly generated, split out between sophomores, and then that upper class community. And then two more things to highlight here. Our rolling reapplication will begin directly after that selection period ends, and it will actually run through June. We'll kind of get into what that means for students in a little bit. And then the last big date that I just like to kind of highlight while we're here is the cancellation deadline with no fee. So if a student selects during kind of that first room selection period, they have until March 31st at 11:59 to kind of cancel, with no reason or anything like that. So we'll kind of take your cancellations as needed through March 31st. And then after that, cancellations will apply. So now I'm going to just kind of take you through the journey of the different steps to complete the application. I'll mention that there's going to be some screenshots that appear on the screen. I promise all the details will be communicated kind of on the screen. You don't have to read what's on there. It's just to kind of give you an idea of what that looks like. So just be aware of that. So like I had mentioned, February 1st was when the application opened to students. And really this first part of the application is there to confirm your individual contact information. So how we can get in touch with you outside of your AU email. It's also there to confirm your emergency contact information. So when you do live on campus, we do require you to have emergency contact information in case there is an emergency and someone needs to speak on your behalf. So we'll utilize that only kind of in those situations. And then you'll also confirm your roommate profile. So that's kind of a two-pronged piece of creating a bio, talking about what you like to do, and also answering a handful of lifestyle questions that our system will utilize later in that roommate matching process. And then you'll also be prompted to review and sign the housing license agreement. So you'll kind of do that all through the portal. And then you'll indicate your interest or your intention to apply for a couple of things. So the first thing you can kind of highlight and say, hey, I'm interested in this, or I intend to have this, is housing accommodation through our Academic Support and Access Center, and gender-based housing consideration through our Center for Diversity and Inclusion. So both of these, while you can raise your hand on our application, it just kind of indicates to our office that you're interested in it. You still need to kind of go to those separate offices to continue that process, to get those accommodations and to get those considerations taken care of. And then the next things you can kind of opt into or kind of display your interest is our all gender housing preference, and then your Black affinity housing preference as well. And I'll kind of go through what each of those mean in the next slide. So first one I wanted to kind of highlight is the difference between all gender housing and gender-based housing considerations. So all gender housing is run through our portal. It allows students to live with other students who have also opted into all gender housing, and it allows you to live with anyone from, regardless of gender, gender identity, gender expression, or sex assigned at birth. There's no additional applications. You just opt in or opt out through the portal. So you don't really need to provide anything else. If you want to live with kind of anyone at AU, you'll just opt in through that process and it will kind of immediately take effect. This kind of differs from our gender-based housing considerations. This is really for students that have specific considerations based off their gender identity. So I like to give the example of, having access to a gender-neutral restroom, or having additional assistance with seeking a trans-inclusive housing environment, or roommates, for instance. So this is required through the Center for Diversity and Inclusion separate form. They'll really work with students one-on-one to figure out which kind of accommodation and consideration is best for them based off of their needs. So we are able to offer these kind of specific accommodations for gender-based housing considerations. And I do want to just highlight, it's not on the screen here, but there is a deadline, a priority deadline to be considered ahead of room selection, and that is February 25th this year. And then another kind of one of those pieces that you can opt into is our Black affinity housing. So Black affinity housing is run through Housing and Residence Life. It is an intentional residential community dedicated, to celebrating and exploring the Black student experience at AU and just, in the world. So the kind of unique thing about this community is that it is open to all class levels. So you'll be with first years, sophomores, and up in the building, in the community, and they really are there kind of to foster that community while living on campus. Again, this is something that you can opt into on our application directly. There's no kind of additional thing that you need to do. But if you have questions, or if you're interested in Black affinity housing, outside of kind of the information that we have provided on our website, absolutely feel free to reach out to our residential life contacts here to kind of learn more. If you want to set up a time to chat, they'll be more than happy to kind of talk you through those different pieces.
And now let me jump back into our application, step 2. As Kelly already mentioned, the reapplication process is a 3-step process. And right now we are on step 2. The roommate matching opened last week on February the 15th, and it is an optional step. It allows students to search for and create roommate groups on the housing portal. Roommate groups can be groups of 2 up to 6 people, and that's included yourself. And there are 2 ways to find a roommate or roommates on the portal. You can view your top roommate matches based on the lifestyle questionnaire you have already filled in as part of the application process step 1. Or if you already know someone who you want to live with, you can search for them by using their screen name, AUID number, or my AU username on the portal and invite them join to your group. While browsing for roommates, you might hit a bump, and that's when our useful tips pointed here can help. Please make sure that your both genders match. Students can see roommates of the same gender on the portal only. And sometimes gender mismatch happens if someone opts in all gender housing, as Kaylee mentioned previously, and the other student has not. Please confirm that both of you are within the same house community. Students were assigned community profiles. Each one was assigned one of the following profiles: honors, CBRS, AU campus, general population, and or Black community housing. And they can see roommates with the same community profile only on the housing portal. And please make sure that neither of you have already committed to another roommate group. If all these look good and you still cannot find the person you're looking for, please feel free to reach out to us and we will be able to provide you with further assistance with resolving that issue. And now we can take a deeper look at the roommate matching page. At the top, as I've already mentioned, you can see your housing community profile. And just below are the both options to find your roommate that we just talked about. View potential roommates that are compatible based on your roommate profile that was created on the roommate profile page as step 1 on the application, or search for a specific roommate by using their AUID, screen name, or my AU username. No matter which option you go for, once you find your roommate match, you can go ahead and select invite roommate to add them to your group. Your group will be then created and visible at the bottom of the roommate matching page. You can rename your group by using the edit group button. You can view who has responded to your request, or if you change your mind later, you can simply cancel your request. Once you invite a person to your roommate group, you'll be brought back to the roommate matching page where your group information will be displayed at the bottom of the page. And as we said already, you can rename the group, you can continue to search for and add other students to the same group, or delete members, or just delete the entire group. Group members have 5 days either to accept or decline your invite once you send it out. And now here comes probably the most exciting part of the process, and this is step 3, the room selection itself. Our room selection process is divided into 2 weeks. Since sophomore students are guaranteed housing, they're able to select first. So they're selecting during the first week of selection process. Every sophomore has been assigned a random time slot between March 20th and 22nd. The upperclassmen will then start selecting the week after. Juniors and seniors who have lived on campus for the 23-24 academic year have been assigned random time slots between March 25th and 27th, and all the rest who have not lived on campus for the current academic year have been assigned time slots starting March 28th. We don't have any time slots starting over the weekend. However, students with time slots already passed will be able to select, since our portal will be open. If they haven't done it yet, they will still have a chance to guarantee their space on campus. And during selection days, the time slots were spread out between 10 a.m. till 4:30 p.m. to make sure the process runs smoothly on the housing portal. Before selecting your space, you will be able to review the floor plans for each hall on the portal. And there are a few important tips you should remember. If you're selecting in a group, the roommate with the earliest time slot will be able to select for the entire group, and they must assign each group member to a bed space before confirming. When your time slot starts, you will be able to see all the residence halls you're eligible to choose from. If you don't see a specific hall you're eligible to live in, that means that there are no spaces available based on your gender or community profile. During selection days, we will be providing frequent updates on the space availability for each residence hall. Once you find your building, please select location. You will then be able to select from individual rooms in that hall, in that residence hall. You can sort by floor on the left-hand side if you're looking for a room on a specific floor. Once you find your room, please add it to the cart. You will then be prompted to assign each group member a bed in that space. Please note that if the number of group members exceeds the number of beds, you will need to add another room to your cart. For example, you're in a group of 4, but there are no 4-person units available to select from. You can select 2 double occupancy rooms next to or close to each other and assign those beds. And once again, a reminder, you must assign each group member to a bed space before confirming, and you cannot add a roommate to your current group after you assign the bed spaces. All the roommate groups, as we've already said, should be created before selection. If you're selecting individually, not as part of a group, you will be able to view potential roommate profiles before selecting an open space in a half-filled room and choose the best match for you. We recommend that you, the student, review your options during this phase instead of selecting a completely empty room. Why is that? In order to open more spaces for groups during selection, we will pair up students occupying half-filled rooms during the selection days. So it is in your best interest to take the lead and preview and select someone in half-filled room that you think you will be a good match to live with. And after selecting the space, students have a grace period to cancel their assignment at no fee. It was part of the timeline, and Kaylee can now review some important dates within that cancellation timeline.
Yeah. So once you select your space, so if you select during that normal room selection period, you'll be held to this timeline. I put just a note at the bottom. If you receive your assignment outside of the selection period, you'll have 72 hours to kind of, cancel your assignment, or else you'll kind of, push through this timeline. As you can see here, it's pretty easy to remember. Each first of the month moving forward after April 1st, the increase takes effect. We do email students frequently during this time to let them know when the cancellation fee will be increasing, so they're able to kind of get that done before that would go into effect and it'd be more costly. One big note is that we don't allow cancellations over the phone or over email. All cancellations do need to be submitted through the housing portal so we can kind of collect some information and ensure that your assignment is properly removed. Now, if you get through the process and unfortunately you aren't able to find a space, we do have what is called our rolling reapplication. So this is the period directly after the room selection, and it is not like an additional, application or process or anything like that. Any student who is still interested in a space can participate in this process. So through June 21st, if a space becomes available for any reason, so if someone cancels, or we have, consolidated rooms that just become available, things like that, those spaces will then become kind of open for any student to select from. We typically email students waiting for an assignment prior to those cancellation fee increases, because we tend to see a couple more cancellations during those periods. So we just say, hey, cancellation fee is about to increase. We expect students to start canceling between this time and this time, so they can kind of go in and, scope out to see what spaces may become available. And again, like I had said, if a student cancels their assignment, their space immediately becomes available for other students to self-select. So, once that cancellation is processed, that room becomes available for anyone else still looking for a space to select from.
Perfect. So now we've kind of talked about the process of how you'll select a space and all these good things, different intentional kind of communities you can live in. Now we want to kind of talk about what options are available depending on your like class, kind of like your class identification. We'll start with sophomores first, as they're guaranteed housing. So our kind of like rising sophomore class. Same kind of situation as you were when you were an incoming first year students. You have eligibility to the traditional kind of double occupancy or single occupancy if you kind of have that worked out through ASAC. You have those kind of rooms available, and you also have some suite style available. Our most like known suite style that is available to our incoming first years and sophomores would be Centennial. Centennial Hall is one that's well beloved by everybody. Centennial is going to be one of those spaces that you have the two rooms on the side that is connected through a bathroom. So that's going to be one of the first suite style options. But when we kind of look at what is beyond that scope, we have halls like Cassell Hall, East Campus. Those are also considered suite style, but instead of two rooms being connected, the suite style, and that just entails that the bathroom is kind of in the room instead of that like traditional bathroom that's like on the floor for everyone. So that's going to be in the suite with you. We also have Leonard Hall and McDowell Hall. Again, those are our traditional spaces, but similar to last summer, McDowell Hall will be renovated this summer. So you'll kind of see some of those bright, fun, like communal features that you see in Leonard. And I guess like the main important thing to just remember is that spaces like obviously Cassell, Centennial, East Campus, they do go quickly because, those are kind of like the suite options. So just, it's probably been said in here before, but just always make sure that you're managing your expectations and, choosing your kind of groups wisely. I think we're ready to go to the next slide. And we get to our upper class. So like we've already said before, that first year and those sophomore residents that we have, they're guaranteed housing. Upperclassmen, we do just kind of try and get in just as availability. So for our upperclassmen, again, similar to sophomores, you have areas like Cassell and McDowell and Leonard available. Again, Leonard and McDowell are kind of those traditional spaces. The biggest difference between McDowell Hall and a different like traditional hall would be that pod style bathrooms that we're introducing. So similar to Leonard, if you haven't, been inside Leonard Hall or seen the video or anything like that, gone on the virtual tour, that's totally fine. Those pod style bathrooms are just kind of like that all gender bathroom option with floor to ceiling lockable doors. Behind those doors, you have a frosted glass window for like maximum privacy. And behind those doors, you have your toilet and your shower and things of that nature. When we get into kind of our more apartment style, that's like, for our upperclassmen, we have Nebraska Hall and Frequency. These are the bathrooms are also included in these rooms, but you also have like full kitchens, and then Frequency apartments, you even have a little bit more. I believe you have like a washer and dryer kind of combination, and I believe they come with a dishwasher as well. So as you can see, there gets to be like different amenities in each room when you get like the further you get in your like class standing. Make sure I'm covering everything here. The biggest difference, I guess, between like the upperclassmen and the residential obviously would be just those amenities. So just want to make sure that, again, setting expectations and obviously picking your groups wisely. One big thing to note about the Frequency apartments is that if for some reason you might not know already, but the Frequency is kind of like that off-campus housing option that obviously we still kind of acknowledge and run. We have different pro staff that kind of oversee that building, but most concerns that you'll have about the building, like maintenance or parking, that goes through kind of I guess like the leasing office that like owns the building. And these different type of rooms can vary in occupancy. We have some spaces in the Frequency that are, they're doubles. Some of them I think go up to 4, and it so it really just depends on what kind of spaces you are, or what kind of spaces you're looking for. But I would say if you are very curious about what these rooms actually look like, because obviously it's listed on here, but if you want to get a better idea, the screenshots on the slides here are screenshots from our virtual tours. Whatever page that you're interested in or whichever hall you're interested in, you would go on that page and select the virtual tours, and you can see pretty much every part of the building, not just the rooms. You can also see bathrooms, common spaces, and for example, like in Leonard, you can also look at those larger communal spaces like the Leonard Hatch and things of that nature.
Perfect. So now at the end here, we just want to take a moment to talk about some off-campus housing and off-campus resources. So if you unfortunately aren't able to select a space with us, we do have a couple of resources that I want to highlight here. So just to kind of generalize the kind of area that we're in. So American University is located in Ward 3 in DC. So that puts us right near Tenleytown, Friendship Heights, Spring Valley, and Cathedral Heights neighborhoods. Most students tend to live in that Tenleytown, Cathedral Heights area, but some also go out towards Van Ness and Cleveland Park, Glover Park and Georgetown. But kind of big thing to kind of highlight here is that almost 70% of those students that live off campus are living in an apartment. So there's kind of a lot of variety of apartments in that area that you can kind of choose from. Some factors to consider while you're kind of searching for an off-campus apartment or maybe townhouse or kind of subletting. So first big thing is location and proximity. So kind of asking yourself, is it walkable or is it easy to access AU? Because you'll probably be coming to campus quite frequently for classes and clubs and activities. Is it also easy to access your other kind of duties in your life? So your jobs, your internships, places you like to go, can you get there easily? And then also thinking about proximity to major items like grocery stores, restaurants, banks, and other necessities that you might want to have access to while you're living there. The next big thing obviously is cost. So thinking about what your monthly budget looks like. So not just thinking about this is the amount of money that I have to pay my landlord or a company, but thinking about that transportation, thinking about food in addition to that as well. If you are a full-time student, the U-Pass is a great way to offset some of those costs for transportation because you can take the metro and the buses kind of wherever you need to go. So you can kind of budget that into that piece as well. Another thing that you'd want to think of is, are you okay with sharing a room or sharing an apartment? So then you can reduce the cost. So kind of think about what you're looking for and what you're budgeting for maybe your portion of rent. Thinking about, does the base rent include utilities or other amenities? So, and if it doesn't, what those might look like for that particular unit or house. And then lastly, like to always highlight, is there a security deposit? Is there an application fee? Are those returned to you at the end of the lease, or is that kind of something that's non-refundable? And then some other considerations that I just like to kind of put out there is just, what are you looking for in an off-campus rental? So whether that's, laundry on site, or maybe it's some aspect of the unit that's updated, or if it's a private bedroom, kind of make a kind of need to have and then I would like to have lists. So while you're looking for places, you can kind of see what kind of checks the most boxes for you. And then also, if you are thinking about living with a roommate, what are you looking for in a roommate? Are you looking for a best friend, or are you looking for someone that, has a similar work schedule or a similar class schedule? So things like that are really great to consider. And then also asking yourself what the lease looks like. So is it a 12-month lease? Is it month to month? Are you subletting from someone else? What are those terms look like? Because that's kind of something that you'll see in DC that, some apartment buildings do things very differently depending on where you're looking. So making sure that you read the fine print and you really look at that piece. So like I mentioned earlier, we do have some resources. So the big one is our off-campus housing site. It is a kind of site dedicated for AU students. So one big thing I like to mention is that all of the landlords, apartments, etc., do need to provide a basic business license, which is proof that they are able to rent in the District of Columbia. We require that to be presented upon signing up for the site. So they've kind of been vetted in that way for us. But as you can see, you can search for sublets and active listings by price and location and other criteria. And on this little map here, you can see, you spread out the map and there's all those pins of apartments that are available for you to kind of look at. And then another really cool feature of the site is you are able to search for other AU students that are looking for a roommate. So if you aren't 100% sure who you want to live with yet or have any friends that are moving off campus, this site is kind of behind an AU login. So you would log in and you can actually upload a little profile photo, do it a little about section, and kind of search for other people who are also looking for roommates who are affiliated to AU as students. And then just as someone who rents myself, I do like to highlight some other resources. So apartments.com is also just a great place to start, just to see kind of what is out there. Or just even a simple Google Maps search, kind of searching by neighborhoods and seeing what apartment buildings or what neighborhoods look like, is a good way to kind of just hear some names of apartment buildings that might sound familiar. And then it might sound a little bit outdated nowadays, but the Facebook groups for kind of leasing and subletting in DC are still very much active. So maybe dust off your Facebook login and see if you can find any of those groups, because people are still posting on their those groups quite often, looking for subletters or tenants to take over leases. And then just some kind of other tips. If you are looking for something off campus, I would typically recommend you start looking about 90 days prior to when you would want to move in. That's when, most apartment buildings and landlords would know kind of the renewal of current units. So that's just a great kind of time to start looking at that. You'll also want to familiarize yourself with DC tenant rights and the Office of the Tenant Advocate. I like to my tagline is DC's great for renters if you know your rights. So they're really there to help you if you have disputes with your landlord or if you have questions about what may be written in your lease or policies and things like that. So that is an absolutely fantastic resource for students to have at their disposal. And then also if you're maybe studying abroad now, or you maybe go home for the summer and you don't have the opportunity to see apartments live, or just kind of, walk around in person, there's a lot of apartments and kind of places that will have on-demand virtual tours, or they'll even do a virtual walkthrough over Zoom, or like a FaceTime type thing. You just need to kind of ask. I love seeing a lot of people do that, especially if they're kind of out of the area. And then one thing we like to highlight in kind of citing our AU good neighbor policy is that once you find a place, be a good neighbor, get to know your neighborhood, get to know your direct neighbors. Because while the good neighbor policy is for neighbors of AU, it also does apply to our non-residential students as well. Just kind of say, we're all being kind of good to the community and good to each other. All right, so that kind of brings us to the end of our formal presentation. I know there's been some questions kind of answered in the Q&A throughout, but if you have any questions that you would like answered live, feel free to drop those in the chat or in the Q&A. And while we wait for any questions, I'll leave us on the slide for our contact information. Again, we can be reached at housing@american.edu, and also on the phone from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And then again, through our website, you can find a chat Monday through Friday from 1 to 4 p.m. Eastern if you're looking for kind of an immediate answer. And then you can also see our website is posted there as well. So I'll just take a beat and see if there's any questions that come up.
I would just want to add to what Kaylee said, and just to notify you that during the selection days, we will be offering extended chat hours that will cover all the time slots in case anyone needs any further assistance with that.
I'll answer, will the presentation be available? So we'll try to make the PDF version of the presentation available on our website. And like I mentioned at the very, very top of the call, we'll also be posting the recording of this webinar to our YouTube channel and linking out in our reapplication webinar, reapplication page on our website. So that'll be available kind of towards the end of the week once we have that updated.
I'll also add in here that we will also be doing some forms of tabling, and Anderson will be in the lobby the 18th and 19th of March just to kind of field those questions and just also like introduce ourselves to students just to kind of gauge how you're feeling about going into the reapplication process. So that'll be March 18th and 19th around like that lunchtime period.
Awesome. So great question just came in. If a student makes a room selection but would like a different hall or room, if one opens due to a cancellation, can they switch, or the cancellation openings only available to those who do not get a space in the regular selection? So one of the kind of big pieces of that rolling reapplication is that those room spaces would become available to anyone. So we kind of like to call it like a room swap or room switch. So if, you know, your student ends up in say a McDowell Hall and they're really looking for a space in Leonard, for example, because maybe all their friends end up there, they're able to kind of make that one-to-one switch themselves once they have their space. So if anything becomes available or they want to kind of move around, once they make their initial selection and kind of have a bed secured, they're able to kind of make that swap. That's through the June 21st period. So we'll kind of allow students to self-select, self-swap through kind of that mid-June period. And then we'll really shut it down, and people would have to request that kind of through us afterwards. So great question also just came in, just knowing when something would be open. So we don't send notifications out of when something would open up. But again, those emails with, you know, our frequent kind of cancellation periods would go out to students. So they would just kind of need to monitor that on them kind of themselves, of logging to the portal, jumping on the application and seeing if there's any spaces that they're more interested in become available. So we'll kind of send the kind of, you know, emails, hey, your cancellation deadline is coming up. And then obviously if they're interested in just kind of getting on the phone with us, happy to take a call as well if they have specific questions about a specific building. Give it one more second, see if anyone has any questions. Awesome. So how likely is it that a group of 4 can get a suite together if the earliest time slot is the 20th at noon? So like we mentioned, the sophomore selection period starts on the 20th. So, you know, you lucked out if one of you has a time slot on the 20th. I would just say from experience, that's a pretty good chance. But we always like to say, you know, no matter what, have an alternative plan just in case. You never know what could happen in those early time slots when people get in there. But if we're starting on the 20th, if you have a time slot, then that's, you know, good luck to you. It's a good chance. Awesome. So it seems like questions have kind of slowed down. If we didn't get to a question or you just don't want to do it here, feel free to email us or give us a call during the week. We'll be happy to answer your questions. Again, this presentation will be shared on our website, and it will be shared via YouTube right at the end of the week once we get that recording secured. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. If you have questions, feel free to send us an email, but have a great evening and have a great rest of your week. Bye, everyone.